Swinging the Minds of the Jungle is not about speed. It is about trust.
Right.
I read that opening line from the source material we're looking at today, and I'll be honest, my first reaction was to kind of roll my eyes a little bit.
I get that. It does sound a bit like a motivational poster.
Exactly, something you'd see in a dentist's office.
Yeah.
But then I kept reading, and by the end I realized this isn't really about motivation. It's about survival mechanics.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's such a direct challenge to how we typically operate.
How so?
Well, usually when we talk about navigating uncertainty, a chaotic market, a confusing career path, just life, we talk about strategy. We want maps.
We want efficiency. We want to know exactly how to get from A to B with like zero friction.
Right, the GPS coordinates. But this text, and it's this really dense poetic piece on the metaphor of the jungle, it basically says if you try to use a map in a jungle, you are going to get stuck.
Or eaten by the moss, as it says.
Eaten by the moss. That's the core tension here. The text argues that the very tools we use for stability planning, analyzing, they actually become liabilities in a dynamic environment.
So it's not a place you conquer.
No, it's a place you have to find a rhythm with. And I think the mission for our deep dive today is to really unpack that rhythm, to figure out why thinking too much makes you miss the beat.
And why it rewards flow over possession. I like that.
Exactly.
But, before we even get to the swinging, we have to talk about the setting. The text is so specific about the ground rules of this place.
It is.
It says, in the jungle, you do not stand still for long. And the reason isn't because of tigers or something, which is what I would assume.
No, it's much more subtle.
It's because roots twist, ground shifts, growth is everywhere.
And that imagery is it's vital. Think about a chessboard. A chessboard is static, right? You can stare at it for an hour, calculate 10 moves, and nothing will change.
The board waits for you.
It waits. But the jungle described here is dynamic. If you stand still to think, the ground is literally shifting under you. Roots are growing over your boots.
So standing still isn't a pause. It's an active decision to get stuck.
Precisely. In a dynamic system, hesitation is never neutral. The text warns that hesitation will leave you tangled. So motion is the baseline requirement just to stay in the game.
Which brings us to the vines, the only way to move. And this is where the text gets into what I'd call the physics of trust. It describes that first swing, and I love that it doesn't make it sound heroic. It says the first swing is always awkward.
Hands unsure, body learning, weight, and timing. I think that awkwardness is so important. We always think flow or intuition should feel magical right from the start.
Yeah, effortless.
But the source material is saying, no, it starts with your body just not knowing what it's doing.
There's a line that really stood out to me here. It says, you feel the arc before you understand it. And to me, that sounds completely backward. I want to understand the arc first. I want the physics diagram. I want to know the load-bearing capacity of the vine, and then I'll feel the arc. Thank you very much.
And that is exactly why you'd fall.
Right.
The text is prioritizing what your body knows over what your mind can calculate. The jungle teaches through motion. You can't simulate this in your head. You can't theorize about gravity from the branch. The only way to understand the vine is to put your weight on the vine.
So the understanding comes after the commitment.
It has to.
But that's terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrifying.
Because you're saying, I have to commit before I know if it's going to work. And the text even admits this. It says, you grab the vine not because you are certain it will hold, but because staying put is dangerous.
It's not confidence. It's necessity.
It's desperation.
Well, yes, and I think that's the key distinction. We usually wait for confidence. We wait until we feel ready. But in this jungle, readiness is a luxury you just don't have. You move because the alternative is stagnation.
If you wait for certainty, you miss the window.
You miss the rhythm. The text is very clear. Thinking too much makes you miss the rhythm.
Okay, let's dig into that missing the rhythm part, because it sounds a little abstract. But if you think about the actual mechanics of swinging, if you pause at the bottom of the swing to check your map, what happens?
You just stop, gravity wins. You become a dead weight hanging on a rope. The rhythm requires momentum. You have to use the energy of the fall to create the energy for the rise.
And thinking interrupts that. It kills the momentum.
It does, which is the perfect segue into the story that I think is the anchor of this whole piece.
The parable of the two travelers.
The mapper and the mover.
Let's start with the mapper, because I'm not gonna lie, I identify with this person. The text says traveler number one tried to map every vine before moving.
Measured the thickness, calculated the distance.
Waited for certainty. I mean, to me, that sounds like a responsible person. That sounds like someone doing their due diligence.
They are responsible. And that's the tragedy of it. The mapper isn't lazy. They're working incredibly hard, measuring, analyzing. That's exhausting.
But it's a form of hiding.
It's a form of hiding. The text implies you can be exhausted from all your mapping and still be standing perfectly still.
And the outcome for the mapper is, oh, like something out of a horror movie. It says, the jungle grew around them.
It is a horror image. It doesn't say they died. It doesn't say a predator got them. It says the environment simply overtook them. They became part of the scenery.
That feels so unfair, though. They were just trying to be safe.
But safety, or at least the illusion of safety from a map, that's the trap. The text says they failed not because they were incompetent, but because they applied a static tool to a dynamic environment.
A map is a snapshot of the past.
Right. The jungle grew around them because by the time they finished their perfect map, the jungle had already changed. The vines moved. The clearings shifted. They were solving a puzzle that didn't exist anymore.
That is, wow, that's heavy. It's analysis paralysis visualized as being slowly buried alive. So then we get traveler number 2, the mover. And the text says this traveler moved without looking. Now, come on. That just sounds reckless.
It does.
That sounds like someone who gets hurt immediately.
And they did. That's the part we have to stress. The text is very clear on this. It says they fell often.
Okay, so it's not some montage of perfect, flawless swings.
Not at all. They fell often. They scraped and laughed and learned.
Yeah.
The mover didn't have a perfect run. They got bruised. They looked foolish. But the crucial difference is the outcome.
They crossed the jungle.
They crossed the jungle.
Yeah.
Because they were in motion. And this brings up how the text completely reframes the idea of a mistake. This might be my favorite part of the whole thing.
What's that?
It says, the jungle does not punish mistakes, it adjusts you.
It adjusts you. I like that. That's such a gentle way to put it.
Well, think about the feedback loop. The text gives these great examples. If you grab too tight, your shoulders ache.
If you let go too soon, you stumble.
Exactly. And usually, we interpret a stumble or an ache as, I'm failing, or I'm not cut out for this.
Right, we take it personally. We think the jungle is rejecting us.
But the text is arguing, no, that's just data. It's physics giving you feedback. The shoulder ache isn't a punishment. It's a signal saying, loosen up. The stumble isn't a judgment. It's a signal saying, your timing was off. Try again.
But the mapper never got that feedback.
Never. Because they never moved. They never felt the ache. They never stumbled. They remained perfect and unblemished right up until they were completely overgrown.
So the scrapes are the map.
The scrapes are the map. The map isn't on paper. It's the feedback you get from banging your shin on a log. The jungle teaches through motion. You learn it by colliding with it.
Okay, so if motion is the goal, we have to talk about the technique. Because the text establishes a core rule for this. It says, life here does not reward possession, it rewards flow.
And this is a really hard shift for most of us. We're taught to acquire things, possess skills, possess titles, possess assets.
We want to grab the vine and say, this is my vine. I have achieved the vine.
I worked hard for this vine, not letting it go.
Yeah.
But what happens if you don't let go of a swinging vine?
You swing back, or you hang there until your arms give out.
You stop moving forward. The text says, each vine holds for a moment, long enough to carry you forward, not long enough to cling.
The value of the vine isn't the vine itself.
No, the value is the momentum it gives you to reach the next one.
Which means letting go is just as important as grabbing on.
Maybe more important, and definitely harder. The text sums up the whole motion as swing, release, reach.
I want to pause on release, because in that split second between letting one vine go and catching the next, you're holding on to nothing.
Yes, the gap, the airtime.
That sounds like the single most anxiety-inducing moment possible. You have no support. You are just falling forward.
That is the moment of trust. That airtime is where the trust the author keeps talking about actually lives. If you need the next vine securely in your hand before you let go of the first one, you'll never move.
Your arms aren't long enough.
Your arms aren't long enough. You have to enter that space of holding nothing to get across.
The text has an interesting word for this. It calls it participation. It says, the jungle does not ask for bravery, it asks for participation.
I love that word choice.
Why not bravery? Jumping into a void feels pretty brave to me.
I think bravery often implies you're fighting something, conquering fear, conquering an enemy. But participation implies you're part of the system. You're working with gravity, not against it.
So it's not something to be conquered.
It's something to be danced with. If you're dancing, you don't try to win. You respond. You feel where the weight is shifting. If you're stiff and trying to control every step, you just look
They
ridiculous.
step on their toes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To participate means letting momentum guide your next move, not your ego.
And it changes the question you ask yourself, too. The text points this out. It says eventually you stop asking, will this work? And start feeling, this moves.
That distinction is so profound. Will this work is a future-based question. It's a prediction. It's the mapper's question.
And this moves is what? It feels almost primitive.
It's sensory. It's present tense. You're not judging the destination. You're just judging the energy right now. Does this vine have tension? Is there traction? If yes, you go with it. You trust that motion itself is guidance.
Motion itself is guidance. That's the phrase that stuck with me. Usually we think guidance comes from the plan or a mentor or a book. But this is saying the act of moving is the guide.
Because when you move, your perspective changes. You see clearings you couldn't see from the starting line. It's like driving at night with headlights. You can only see 100 feet ahead, but you can make the whole journey that way.
You just have to trust the road will be there.
But there is a catch.
Ah.
You can't be weighed down. The text says you cannot carry everything with you. You move with what you need and leave the rest behind.
Back to flow versus possession.
If you're hoarding your past successes, your old grudges, your detailed 5-year plans, you're too heavy. The physics won't work. Gravity will pull you down. The mover had to travel light. They kept their hands free.
You know, I can hear some listeners thinking, this sounds irresponsible. Don't plan, just go. I have a mortgage. I can't just swing on a vine and hope for the best.
And that's a completely fair critique. But the text actually anticipates this. It clarifies. This is not recklessness. It is responsiveness.
And the differences.
Recklessness is closing your eyes and just hoping. Responsiveness is eyes wide open. The traveler was still looking at the vines, feeling the ache in their shoulder, judging the distance. They were paying more attention than the mapper, not less.
But they just weren't filtering that attention through a pre-written plan.
Exactly. They were filtering it through the present moment. It's the difference between zoning out and being in the zone.
You are trusting that you're built for this environment.
Eventually, your body understands what your mind could not calculate.
So let's jump to the end of the text, because there is a destination. The mover reaches a clearing.
The clearing. The moment of clarity.
And the realization they have there is the final twist. And when you reach the clearing, you realize you were never lost. You were learning how to move.
It just recontextualizes the entire struggle. All that time you spent feeling awkward, stumbling, thinking, I'm lost, I don't know what I'm doing. That was the path.
You weren't lost, you were in training.
Right. But notice when that realization happens.
At the clearing, not before.
You don't get the reassurance while you're in midair. You can't. You cannot see the clearing from inside the trees. If you demand to know you aren't lost before you start, you become the mapper.
You become the statue.
You have to tolerate the feeling of being lost to find the way.
It's interesting how the text just ends there. That is the jungle. That is the swing. That is the story. It just sort of hands the vine over to you.
It does. It doesn't give you 3 steps to successful swinging. It just describes the physics and leaves the choice to you. Are you going to measure the vine or are you going to grab it?
It's such a powerful metaphor for, well, anything where the outcome is unknown. Creative work, relationships.
Anything where the ground shifts, which, if we're really paying attention, is everything.
So to sort of recap what we've pulled from this, because we've covered a lot of canopy here.
We have the environment. Dynamic and shifting, where standing still is a trap.
We have the method. Intuition over calculation. Feeling the arc before you understand it.
We have the warning of the mapper, who died of certainty, and the example of the mover, who survived through responsiveness.
And that core rule, flow over possession. Learning to let go.
And finally, that mental shift from the anxiety of, will this work, to the presence of, this moves.
It's a lot to take in, but I keep coming back to that idea of the awkward first swing. It feels so forgiving. It gives us permission to be clumsy.
It frames clumsiness not as failure, but as data entry. You're just inputting data into your nervous system. You can't skip that step.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked a lot about the fear of being lost, that panic of, I don't have a map.
It's a primal fear for sure.
But look at the logic of the text again. The jungle grows around those who wait for certainty. Those who stand still get buried.
Hmm.
So if you're out there and you feel frantic and uncertain and like you're just swinging from one thing to another, maybe you aren't failing.
You're moving.
Exactly. So here's the question. Is the feeling of being lost actually just the feeling of being still? Perhaps clarity doesn't come from a map. Maybe clarity is something that only appears after you've already swung.
Just don't forget to let go.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.